Not even fame spares someone from disrespect. Eminem just wanted a quiet dinner, but a waiter decided to belittle him, thinking he was just another regular guy. What he didn't expect was the brutal response that followed. No yelling, no drama, but with a weight that silenced the entire restaurant. Before we dive into this surprising story, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more incredible stories like this. Now, let's get into what happened. New York City was as bustling as ever, but Eminem, accustomed to crowds and attention, just wanted a night of peace. Staying at one of the city's most luxurious hotels, he allowed himself a moment of rest before facing a marathon of professional commitments. That day had been exhausting. Interviews, meetings, and a whirlwind of responsibilities. Now all he wanted was a quiet dinner, no cameras, no fuss, just a meal to recharge. Dressed in a comfortable hoodie and a low-pulled cap, he headed down to the hotel restaurant. His discreet look was intentional. Without the stage lights and spotlights, he enjoyed the feeling of blending in. He settled into a more secluded corner, away from curious glances. But to his surprise, what should have been a regular dinner was about to turn into an uncomfortable encounter. The first signs were subtle: whispered comments, smirks exchanged between staff members, and glances cast with a hint of disdain. A few employees shared amused looks while he browsed the menu. Eminem noticed, but chose to ignore it. He was used to stares and whispers. It was part of the price of fame. The real problem, however, was when disrespect crossed the line from silence to something more direct. The waiter approached with an air of arrogance. His tone carried a thinly veiled sarcasm, as if he wanted to make a point. "Wow, you look really different without all that superstar makeup. Without the spotlights, you're just another regular guy." His words hung in the air, filled with intent. For a second, the surrounding environment seemed to freeze. Eminem, experienced in the game of provocation, simply lifted his gaze. He could have reacted right then and there, but he chose to remain composed. He placed his order calmly, showing no signs of irritation. But the waiter wasn't done yet. "I bet no one here even recognized you. Your glory days are over, huh?" A quiet chuckle from another staff member in the background made the comment feel even more disrespectful. The silence at the nearby table indicated that the other guests were paying attention. Some glanced sideways, curious to see how Eminem would respond. The rapper, on the other hand, remained still for a moment, as if processing every word spoken. The atmosphere was now thick with tension. What would he do next? That night, which started as a simple dinner, was turning into a test of patience and self-control. But the waiter had no idea he was dealing with someone who didn't need to raise his voice to put someone in their place. The waiter wasn't just rude. He seemed determined to turn that casual encounter into a public humiliation. With every word that left his mouth, his tone of mockery became more obvious. To him, this was nothing more than an inside joke among employees, a moment of fun at the expense of someone he wrongly assumed was no longer relevant. But there was something he didn't understand. Eminem never needed validation to know who he was. The rapper, sitting with the calmness of someone who had faced much bigger battles than an arrogant waiter, remained composed. His eyes, however, revealed that his patience was being tested. The restaurant, once a place of luxury and refinement, was slowly turning into a silent battleground where exchanged glances between guests exposed the growing discomfort. Everyone knew that the line of respect had been crossed. The waiter, emboldened by his own ignorance, decided to push further. "I bet back in the day people would go crazy when you walked in. But look at you now. Seems like no one even cares anymore." He smirked, waiting for a reaction. He wanted to see discomfort, maybe even anger, but all he found was a cold, steady gaze, an unsettling silence that spoke louder than any words. The conversations around the restaurant began to fade, as if the guests were bracing themselves to witness what was about to unfold. Some pretended to focus on their plates, but the tension in the air was undeniable. Even the hotel staff seemed unsure should they laugh along with their colleague or step back. It was clear that this had gone too far. Eminem picked up the glass in front of him, slowly turning it between his fingers. His mind was processing every word, every gesture. He could have easily ignored it, finished his dinner and moved on, as if nothing had happened. But letting something, like this slide, would mean accepting something he had spent years fighting against, the right to be treated with dignity, regardless of what people thought they knew about him. The waiter was still enjoying himself, satisfied with his attempt to ridicule one of the greatest rappers of all time. But the tide was about to turn. He had no idea that he was seconds away from receiving a response that would completely shift the balance of power. And then Eminem decided it was time to speak. Eminem placed the glass back on the table with deliberate calm, leaning forward slightly. His piercing gaze locked onto the waiters, and in that instant, the young man realized he had made a mistake. The rapper didn't need to raise his voice, didn't need to lose his temper. He simply chose his words with the precision of a scalpel, sharp and undeniable. "Funny," Eminem began, pausing just long enough to let the weight of silence settle. Before continuing, "You're serving tables in a hotel that I could buy in the blink of an eye, so tell me, who here has really lost their glory days?" The impact of his words was immediate. The smug grin on the waiter's face disappeared, as if it had been wiped away. The clinking of silverware against plates softened, and the entire atmosphere of the restaurant shifted in an instant. Some guests exchanged surprised glances, while others simply sat in silence, taking in the moment. The waiter tried to compose himself, nervously wiping his hands on his apron, but it was too late. His face turned red, and the arrogance he had, displayed just moments ago, began to crumble. For the first time that evening, he felt the weight of his own words crashing back down on him. Eminem, however, showed no sign of satisfaction. There was no smirk, no triumphant look, just the simple truth, spoken in a way that left no room for argument. From the back of the restaurant, a guest let out a muffled chuckle, unable to hide their amusement at what they had just witnessed. It was the kind of moment that would be remembered by everyone who had seen it unfold. But the night was far from over. The waiter's embarrassment was just the beginning. The situation was about to escalate even further, and Eminem wouldn't have to lift a single finger to make it happen. An awkward silence filled the air like a storm about to break. The waiter, suddenly unsure of himself, glanced around, searching for support, but no one was willing to back him up. His arrogance had turned against him, and now he was left to deal with the consequences. That's when a nervous figure rushed into the dining area, the hotel manager, a well-dressed man with a tense expression. He could tell something had gone terribly wrong. Trying to regain control of the situation, the manager forced an uneasy smile and asked, with as much diplomacy as he could muster, "Is there a problem here, sir?" Before Eminem could even respond, a guest from a nearby table who had been closely following the exchange spoke up. "The problem," the man said loudly, "is that your employee is an idiot who has no idea who he's talking to." The words hit like a slap in the face. The waiter's eyes dropped to the floor, while the manager's face tightened. He had just walked into a disaster that was now spiraling even further out of control. Eminem, however, remained calm. He didn't need to add anything. Everything had already been said. Desperate to salvage the hotel's reputation, the manager quickly turned back to Eminem with a formal apology. "We deeply regret this inappropriate behavior. Please allow us to offer you a complimentary dinner as a gesture of our sincere apologies." His tone was pleading, as if hoping to smooth things over before the situation escalated any further. But Eminem wasn't interested in a free meal. He wasn't here to negotiate his dignity. Without haste, he rose from his chair, adjusted his hoodie, and looked directly at the manager. "I don't need a free dinner," he said firmly. "I just hope you treat your customers better. People who work with the public should know the difference between a joke and disrespect." Those words, spoken so simply yet carrying so much weight, resonated beyond that moment. The manager nodded, embarrassed. The waiter, on the other hand, already knew his night was over, but the impact of this encounter was far from finished. Without another word, Eminem turned and walked toward the exit. And that's when something unexpected happened, something that would make this night even more unforgettable. As Eminem walked toward the exit, an unexpected sound broke through the tense silence of the restaurant. Applause. At first, it was just one or two guests, clapping softly, almost hesitantly. But within seconds, the gesture spread across the room like wildfire. They weren't just acknowledging Eminem's presence, they were applauding his response. The waiter, who had been so arrogant just moments ago, now looked small, swallowed up by the weight of his own actions. His eyes darted between the manager, the customers, and the door, as if searching for an escape from the humiliation. But there was nowhere to hide. His actions had consequences, and now he had to face them. The hotel manager, still trying to maintain professionalism, discreetly signaled to one of the supervisors. Within minutes, the waiter was escorted out of the dining area. His time there was over. Some guests exchanged approving glances, others simply shook their heads as if to say, "He brought this on himself." Eminem, however, didn't react to the applause. Without breaking his stride, he walked calmly through the hotel lobby and out the front doors as if nothing had happened. To him, this wasn't about ego or putting on a show. It was about respect, about putting someone in their place without ever having to raise his voice, without stooping to their level, just with words, sharp and precise. The next day, the hotel management issued a formal apology, acknowledging the mistake and confirming that the employee was no longer part of their team. Eminem, staying true to his reserved nature, made no public statements about the incident. For him, there was no need. But the lesson remained for everyone who had witnessed that night. People often underestimate those around them, judging by appearances, by the moment, by fame, or the lack of it. But respect never goes out of style, and trying to belittle someone without knowing their story can be the worst mistake a person can make. This incident proved that respect isn't something you can buy, but it's also not something to take for granted. The waiter thought he could belittle someone without consequences, but he learned the hard way that words can be just as sharp as knives. Eminem didn't need to yell or make a scene. He simply showed that true greatness lies in how we handle disrespect. Have you ever witnessed a situation like this? How would you have reacted in Eminem's place? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss more incredible content like this. See you next time.